All right, guys, this is Norval Central coming back at you with another YouTube video, and I really appreciate all the love and support so far that I've had on my YouTube channel. Man, it's been a blessing so far the last couple of weeks being to get back into the YouTube grind. But I have a special guest with me. Nole Nation, I want you to introduce yourself to us.
What's up? I'm Nole Nation. You can find me on Instagram at Nole underscore nation underscore. And yeah, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, man. I know you're a little bit over 3,000 followers at this point, man. I know I'm got up to 32,000 at this point, but it just seems like yesterday I was grinding to get to 300 followers, and then you just see that massive jump. I think eventually your time's going to come, and I know a lot of people are kind of excited to see your content and see how it progresses. And I know a lot of people too have just developed this like positive community of like Florida State fans and even though this program's not really been in the greatest spot per se, I mean, it seems like a lot of people are trying to get back on the positivity train. We're probably going to see later this offseason before the season starts, you're going to see 8-4 predictions, 9-3, maybe even 10-2. Who knows? You might even see Mike Myrick with the Mike Got Us. You might see him coming back in the fold again and getting everybody excited for the season. But first off, I just want to ask you before we kind of get in our topic, how do you feel about Florida State for the upcoming season?
It's gonna be I feel very good about what we're gonna do this year.
Hmm.
If I was to give you a record prediction, I would say probably 7-5 to 8-4.
Yeah. I think
Um,
if you're going 7-5 or 8-4, do you think that keeps Mike Norvell around?
mm, I
Hmm.
think anything over 6-6 will keep him there.
Okay. And like I said before, man, like my account's associated with Mike Norvell technically. I have a lot of good relationships with the different couple of different coaching staff, players, recruits. Obviously, I want to keep it a positive space for Florida State football, but at the same time, I understand that the results have been underwhelming at this point. You know, you've had two winning seasons in 22 and 23, and then you've had four losing seasons, you know, in between that. And it just feels like Florida State's kind of in this bad spot where you had a tough, brutal 2017 year with Jimbo Fisher. You had those 2 years with Taggart that didn't go the way you wanted it to, and now you're dealing with this mess with Mike Norvell. And I think obviously you want to see positivity, and hopefully our two accounts as well as some other Florida State accounts too. I always love to showcase a lot of different Florida State accounts because you know at the end of the day it's hard to write about Florida State nowadays. It's hard to talk about positivity. It's hard not to be, I guess you could say, critical because of the results on the field. I mean, our money's not really been in the greatest spot. But I did kind of want to talk about a positive result today. I think that can be a factor in this year, and that's going to be defensive tackle Kevin Wynn. This is a guy that, as everyone knows, Mike Norvell talks about the transfer portal and picking up a lot of different guys and acquiring veteran talent for the gaps that he has in the roster. But Kevin Wynn was a former four-star prospect in the 25 class. The top, basically either him or Chroma were the top two prospects in that class. How do you feel about Kevin Wynn just as his overall skill set, just how he is as a player?
I think he's got a lot to prove this season. I mean, injuries have kind of kept him limited, but hopefully, he kind of becomes a similar version of Darrell Jackson.
Yeah, and that's the thing too with Jackson getting drafted by the Jets. Obviously, we know about the Jets situation and how they handle some of their Florida State draft picks. Obviously, Azaria Thomas has done pretty well so far, but it just seems like with the Jordan Travis situation after the injury, it didn't really go the greatest. They probably sped him up a little bit more in his development, and eventually he retired from the NFL. Do you think with Jackson kind of being out of the realm at Florida State, with him being 6'5", 337 pounds, him being that focal point in the middle of the defense, do you think Kevin Wynn, not to put too much expectations on him, but do you think he can kind of take that elevation to the game next season for 2026?
Well, absolutely. I mean, if he remains healthy, that's been the biggest challenge for with him so far. Is injuries. I think he can have a very, very, really good year if he stays healthy.
Yeah, I remember watching him in high school in the state of Georgia, kind of watching some of his film tape, especially when he first started coming out as like a sophomore and a junior, and he was really kind of progressing into his recruiting ranking. Man, it looks like a WWE superstar. He was suplexing everybody. I'm talking about getting through the gaps. I mean, running backs were scared to come up the middle because, I mean, it was just, he was suplexing everyone. And you need that violence, especially with him. But the problem is, as you said before, injuries are going to take a toll on that. Now, obviously, he's not 6'5", 337 pounds, but he's 6'2", 330. He's a little bit on the smaller side in terms of that, but Florida State had to battle a school like Georgia to be able to get the services of him. And I think that was a huge win for Mike Norvell, just like it was for Chroma, getting him from a Georgia, from an Auburn, kind of things like that. I think especially when you think about it too, and I kind of want to get your thoughts on this, but Mario Cristobal, Miami's head coach, has always emphasized the trenches, always wanted to get offense and defensive line. And we often criticize Florida State the last couple of years, especially in that 24 season. They didn't really have that. They didn't really have anybody that was really ultra dominant. You saw last year with the Desir twins that everyone talks about. They decided to enter the transfer portal and renegotiate their contracts and get a little bit more money. And then you got a guy like Rylan Kennedy, who we talk about a little bit too from the transfer portal. You just got him recently on the defensive end spot. Not much production, just like Wynn. But then you also got a guy like Daniel Lyons, who could also be the other defensive tackle in that system too. It looks like you have a full complement that you can kind of roll around with the defensive line. But just kind of looking at Kevin Wynn, a guy that only had one tackle last year, do you think it's realistic to expect him to kind of get that elevated role? Do you think it's in him to be able to do that? I mean, because I mean, let's face it. I mean, you had a guy that got injured last year, 4 games, only one tackle, didn't really do a whole lot, and now you got your rival coming into the national championship appearance game. You got a new coach smell or new car smell, excuse me, in John Summerall over there at Florida. How does Mike Norvell kind of get this momentum back in order with the defensive line coaches and just kind of getting him back in track with Kevin Wynn?
Well, I mean, there's really no. I mean, he's gonna have to obviously get better,
Yeah,
healthier in the off season.
yeah,
Work out, all that. But I think in terms of like tackle wise, I know you just said that he only has one tackle and he
yeah,
played 4 games last year.
yeah.
If he plays a full season, I mean, the future's bright for him. He can easily turn and change that.
Yeah, man. It's like at some point, Terrence Knighton has got to get a couple guys in there. We thought James Williams was going to be that guy at the defensive end spot last year. We thought there were going to be a lot of guys at the defensive line that just didn't really pan out. Um, Kind of getting off the topic a little bit more of Kevin Wynn, but just going to the defensive line as a whole. I know I talked about like, the Daniel Lyons, the Desir twins, the, Rylan Kennedy. Is there anybody on the defensive line other than just Kevin Wynn that you're looking at to possibly make, I guess you could say, a breakout year?
Mm, I think Rylan Kennedy could definitely be
Yeah.
Rylan Kennedy. You know, other than that, Mandrell Desir,
Yeah.
I think he can make it.
And that's the other thing I think about too, because a lot of people talk about Mandrell Desir being this type of, he had 6.5 sacks last year. So obviously you have that in your back pocket. He's one of the freshman All-Americans. Daryl Desir, his twin brother, didn't really get a whole lot of attention. I know that Mike Norvell talked about in a recent press conference, maybe about 2 or 3 months ago, Diamante Diggs from Coastal Carolina. He was a guy that didn't really pan out too much at Florida State. Actually, got injured, hurt his, I think it was his neck, if I remember correctly, after 3 games last year. Got a sack, and Mike Norvell talked about how he was probably one of the better defensive linemen in this rotation if he's healthy. That's a huge praise. I mean, considering what this defensive line is. Not saying it's all, conference, and I'm not saying this defensive line is going to blow you away, but I am saying that's pretty high praise for someone that come from Coastal Carolina that hasn't really done too much, that just hasn't really done there. Do you are you really trusting Mike Norvell when he says like this player is going to do well or Daniel Lyons has really emerged this offseason? Are you buying the hype again or are you kind of going away from it and saying, okay, let's just wait and see?
I'm more. I really don't like buying into hype
Hmm.
because it's here and it's there. They're
Hmm.
gonna hype up everybody at some point. Um, I'm kind of more of a guy that just kind of wait and show me on the field. You
Yeah.
know, let's get some wins and let's see what they're really about.
Yeah.
That's just my stance on it.
And I think too, I think it also helps because, a couple years ago we had to play Duquesne and then we played LSU. I think it's going to really help us to be able to play New Mexico State on August 29th and then turn around and play the standalone game against SMU, have that bye week to kind of focus and then kind of get to, I'm not going to say a meaningless game against Alabama like I had mentioned before in a recent video, but just talking about a game that they're going to be looking for revenge. It's going to be a test to see how you're going to stand for the rest of the year. But you cannot let that game define who you are. You can't let the defensive line get depleted by injuries. You can't let them get by inconsistencies because you have a back half of the schedule. You have road games you have to win, like a Louisville, like a Pittsburgh, Boston College, different teams like that, even a Miami, who I think you might be outmatched a little bit by. But I just think there's a lot of games on the schedule that you have to have the defensive line healthy for. And this has got to be the opportunity. You got to have them later in the year. You can't have a Kevin Wynn that only plays 4 games, gets hurt, and then now you're trying to backtrack and figure out who you have for the back half of the options.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, like I said, man, I appreciate you coming on today. Like I said, I will make sure to link your account and everything in the description just so you have everyone hopefully being able to follow you and everything. I know it's great, insightful content that you always post on Instagram too. Like I said, I'm also doing Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, whatever the case is. I'm trying to get my name out there as much as I possibly can. Florida State season is coming up very, very quickly. I know everyone wants to be doubters right now, but don't jump on the bandwagon when Florida State kind of gets it going, and we see that 8-4, 9-3, even a 10-2 season. And maybe they might prove some people wrong this year. But do you have anything else to say before we head off today?
No, sir. Go Knowles.
Go Noles, man. And like I said, thank y'all for watching the video. Comment your thoughts, like the video, and subscribe to the channel. And we'll be seeing you soon.